This is a funny story. Again, it's related to the free speech issue because one of the ways in which the Trump administration is trying to chip away at speech and trying to destroy any kind of independent journalism, biased, unbiased. There's no issue of. There's nothing that says that journalism has to be unbiased. But one of the ways they want to chip away at this is not only taking the licenses away from broadcasters, but the other way to do it is for Donald Trump to just sue company after company after company after company and use that threat of lawsuit to intimidate the media into treating him more, quote, fairly. I think the media generally is way too soft on Trump. I think the media should be much more critical of Trump in a rational way from a perspective of liberty and perspective of freedom, perspective of capitalism. I think the media has given him a free ride. I think it's why he's back. But yes, so Trump sues all these media companies. And we talked about this the other day, that he had sued the New York Times for defamation and all these other things and so on. And today, a judge threw the case out, or at least threw this out, saying they'd have to resubmit their lawsuit. He gave them 28 days to do it. And so let me read you what he wrote, because it's really funny. I mean, I like this judge. This judge is a good guy. Anyway, here's what he wrote. As every member of the bar of every federal court knows, or is presumed to know, Rule requires that a complaint include, quote, a short and plain statement of the claim showing that the pleader is entitled to relief. Rule 8EI, this is the rule, helpfully adds that each averment of a pleading shall be simple, concise, and direct. Some pleadings are necessarily longer than others. The difference likely depends on the number of parties and claims, the complexity of the governing facts, and the duration and scope of the pertinent events. But both a shorter pleading and a longer pleading must comprise, quote, simple, concise, and direct allegations that offer a short and plain statement of the claim. Rule 8 governs every pleading in a federal court, regardless of the amount in controversy, the identity of the parties, the skill or reputation of the counsel, the urgency or importance, real or imagined, of the dispute, or any public interest at issue in the dispute. In this action, a prominent American citizen, perhaps the most prominent American citizen, alleges defamation by a prominent American newspaper publisher, perhaps the most prominent American newspaper publisher, and by several other corporate and natural persons, alleging only 2 simple counts of defamation. The complaint consumes 85 pages. Count 1 appears on page 80. Count 2 appears on page 83. Pages 1 through 79, plus part of page 80, present allegations common to both counts and to the defendant and to all defendants. Each count alleges a claim against each defendant, and apparently each claim seeks the same remedy against each defendant. This is great. I love the way these judges write. They just have a way of concise speak. This is the thing I love about the court system. Even under the most generous and lenient application of Rule 8, the complaint is decidedly improper and impermissible. The pleader initially alleges an electoral victory by President Trump in historic fashion by trouncing the opponent, and alludes to persistent election interference from the legacy media led most notoriously by the New York Times. The pleader alludes to, quote, the Halcyon Halcyon days of the newspaper, but complains that the newspaper has become full-throttled mouthpiece of the Democratic Party, which allegedly results in the deranged endorsement of President Trump's principal opponent in the most recent presidential election. The reader of the complaint must labor through allegations such as, quote, a new journalistic low for the hopeless, compromised, and tarnished gray lady, unquote. The reader must endure an allegation of, quote, the despair, the desperate need to defame with a partisan spear rather than report with the authentic looking glass, unquote. And an allegation that, quote, the false narrative about The Apprentice was just the tip of the defendant's melting iceberg of falsehoods, unquote. Similarly, in one of the many, often repetitive and laudatory towards President Trump, but superfluous allegations, the pleader states, The Apprentice represented the cultural magnitude of President Trump's singular brilliance, which captured the zeitgeist of our time, unquote. I hope you're finding this as entertaining as I am, because I am finding this amazingly entertaining. I mean, this is Trump being called out for his, ridiculousness, his ridiculousness. The complaint continues with allegations and defenders of President Trump's further and the acquisition of the Trump's wealth, with a protracted list of many properties owned, developed, or managed by the Trump Organization, and a list of President Trump's many books, with a long account of the history of The Apprentice, with an extensive list of President Trump's media appearances, with a detailed account of other legal actions both by and against President Trump, including an account of the Russian collusion hoax, and incidents of alleged lawfare against President Trump, and with much more persistently alleged in abundance, fluid, and innovating detail. Innovating detail. There's a word for it. Even assuming that each allegation in the complaint is true. Of course, that is for a jury to decide and not pertinent here. This order suggests nothing about the truth of the allegation or the validity of the claim, but addresses only the manner of the presentation of the allegations in the complaint. Even assuming at the trial the plaintiff offers evidence supporting every allegation in the complaint, and that evidence is accepted by the jury as fact, and even assuming that after finally melting the defendant's alleged iceberg of falsehoods, the plaintiff prevails for each reason alleged in the complaint. Even assuming all that, a complaint remains an improper and impermissible place for the tedious, listen to this, for the tedious and burdensome aggregation of prospective evidence, for the rehearsal of tendacious argument, or for the protracted recitation and explanation of legal authority putatively supporting the plaintiff's claim. The claims for relief. As every lawyer knows, or is presumed to know, a complaint is not a public forum for vituperation and invective, not a projected platform to rage against an adversary. A complaint is not a megaphone for public relations or podium for passionate oration at a political rally or the functionally equivalent of Hyde Park Speaker's Corner. Oh, come on, David, that was English. Beautiful English. Now, some words I can't pronounce, but that's me, that's not him. This is really good. In other words, this BS 85 pages of just boisterous, praising of Trump and accusations against the New York Times. It's not a complaint. Here's what a complaint is, he says. A complaint is a mechanism to fairly, precisely, directly, soberly, and economically inform the defendants in a professionally constrained manner, consistent with the dignity of the adversarial process, of the nature and content of the claim. A complaint is a short, plain, direct statement of allegations of fact sufficient to create a plausible claim for relief and sufficient to permit the formulation of an informed response. Although lawyers received a modicum of expressive latitude in pleading the claim of a client, the complaint in this action extends far beyond the outer bound of that latitude. I mean, this is a great judge, because what this judge is basically saying, you can call him hoity-toity, but that just reveals your bias and again, your kind of Trump mindlessness syndrome. What this judge is arguing for is objectivity. What this judge is arguing for is the facts, and only the facts. You want to complain? Fine. Give me the facts. Present the case. To the point, succinctly, objectively. Don't spend 88 pages praising the defendant, BSing about his TV show, and so on. This is an intellectual. This is a judge. This is objectivity. This is our court system. This is why I still say our court system is the last bastion of liberty and freedom. Stop this subjectivism. Stop this spewing of emotion. Lay it out. Lay out the facts. 4 pages, 8 pages. You don't need 88 pages. So that is the last hope we have in this country, is judges like that. But yeah, so he struck it down. It has to be rewritten in 28 days. Good for this judge. Somebody said on the chat that he is a Trump appointee. I didn't have time before the show to check who appointed him. I don't care who appointed him. The reality is, I like him because he's direct. And that's the other thing about judges generally. They tend to be direct. They don't mince words. I mean, some judges, not all of them. It's the only place where people seem not afraid of Trump. Like everywhere else, people are terrified of him. Businessmen are terrified of him. Congressmen are terrified of him. Other politicians terrified. Other leaders of other countries terrified. The only people who seem to be willing to stand up to Trump and call him, I would even say the Democrats are terrified of Trump. The only people actually willing to call it, to actually state, you're wrong, or this is nonsense, or this is completely distorted and perverted, are judges. And they've done it on several of his cases. And, but some, not to name names, of course, will attack anybody who attacks Trump and defend Trump no matter what he does, even if he shoots somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, even if he uses the power of the state to get rid of a comedian in late night television. Democrats are way too weak in attacking Trump.